Welcome to the room they never thought you'd survive long enough to enter. Yeah, you. The one they watched, the one they doubted, the one they tracked like a glitch in their perfect little system. You feel that? That tightness in your chest, that mix of panic and pride. Good. Hold it. Don't run from it. That's the feeling of being noticed by people who thought you'd be nothing more than background noise. These high-rank agents, they've been tracking everything. Every late night you didn't post about. Every breakdown nobody saw. Every tiny decision that looked stupid from the outside, but was actually you choosing to stay alive, stay moving, stay dangerous. They logged it all. Not the selfies, not the fake wins, not the look at me highlight reel. No. They logged the data you hoped nobody would ever see. The nights you opened your phone, scrolled through everyone else's perfect life, and felt that sharp, ugly little voice whisper, "Why are you even here?" Yeah, they saw that. The days you dragged yourself out of bed when your soul weighed more than your body. The times you said, "I'm fine," with that dead look in your eyes, and still showed up anyway. The hours you spent learning, practicing, failing in silence while nobody clapped, nobody liked, nobody shared, tracked, recorded, analyzed, and now? Now they want you in the room, not because they're kind, not because they suddenly believe in you. They want you in the room because you broke their prediction models. You weren't supposed to keep going. You weren't supposed to become self-aware. You weren't supposed to wake up one day and say, "Wait, maybe I'm not the problem. Maybe the system is." But you did. You kept moving. You kept evolving. You kept acting like someone who had nothing to lose and everything to gain. Let's be honest for a second. You think you went unnoticed? You think your suffering was invisible? The world may have ignored you. Your friends may have scrolled right past your silent cries. Your family may have misread your exhaustion as attitude. But the system doesn't miss a thing. They saw the spikes in your search history. Motivation. How to keep going. How to start again. How to stop feeling like this. They saw the nights you went quiet online but active in your notes app, typing out plans you didn't even believe in yet, drafting ideas, writing out goals, deleting, rewriting, deleting again. They noticed when something shifted, when your questions changed from "why me" to "why not me," when your Google searches switched from "how to escape" to "how to build," when you stopped arguing with people and started arguing with your own excuses instead. That's when the agents leaned in, zoomed in, magnified your every move. Because people like you, you're dangerous. Not because you're violent, because you're awake. You are what they fear the most. Someone who has seen the worst of life and still chooses to stand up and say, "All right, run it back. I'm not done." You know what scares powerful people? Not protests, not hashtags, not angry posts that disappear in 24 hours. What scares them is consistency. Someone who keeps showing up. Someone who keeps building. Someone who refuses to play the part of the victim forever. They designed this world to keep you tired, distracted, broke, addicted, comparing yourself and begging for crumbs. And yet here you are, still thinking, still trying, still dreaming bigger than your circumstances. So these agents, these high-rank watchers, these invisible eyes in the walls, they started asking the one question they never expected to ask about you. What if we're looking at an outlier? Because every time you didn't fold, you generated something terrifying. Data that doesn't fit. You worked a job that drained you and still studied on your breaks. You were depressed and still showed up for the people you love. You had every reason to shut down and still found some tiny pathetic-looking reason to continue. You were not supposed to bounce back from that heartbreak. You were not supposed to come back from that failure. You were not supposed to keep going after that betrayal. But you did. And every time life threw a coffin at you, and you crawled out of it, somewhere in their reports, a red flag went up. Greater than subject refuses to comply with projected collapse. So they watched closer. They watched when you stopped chasing people who didn't value you. They watched when you stopped explaining yourself to those who clearly didn't want to understand. They watched when you turned your energy from pleasing people to building yourself. They saw you unfollow the drama, mute the noise, distance yourself from the same cycles that were slowly killing you. You thought you were just pulling away, thought you were just going ghost. No. You were going off-grid. In a world that feeds on your constant performance, you became unprofitable in your pain, too focused to be easily manipulated, too tired of suffering to keep swallowing the same lies. Do you understand how revolutionary that is? To look at your own pain and say, okay, if I have to feel all this, it's not going to be for nothing. That's when the invitations start. Not the ones in your inbox, the ones in your life. Suddenly you're in conversations you never expected. People ask your opinion like it matters. Opportunities show up that feel too big for you. That's the room calling. The room where people like you don't usually end up. The room where decisions are made. The room where faces are serious. Language is coded, and nobody's posting what really happens there. And now they want you in that room. So let's talk about why. Not because they want to honor your struggle. No, that's PR. They want you in the room because they finally figured it out. You're not just another user. You're not just another worker, consumer, broken heart, lost soul. You're proof. Proof that their system failed to fully crush you. Proof that free will, resilience, and raw, unpolished, angry hope still exist. And if proof like you spreads, now that's a problem. Imagine this. Someone who went through what you went through, actually believing in themselves. Not because some influencer told them to, not because a quote said, "You got this," but because they looked at every crack in their life and said, "If I'm still here after all that, then there's clearly something inside me they couldn't kill." That's you. Walking evidence that survival isn't random. It's deliberate. It's strategic. It's ugly and stubborn and not aesthetic enough for social media. But it's real. And now they want that in the room. They want to study you up close. See how you think. Hear how you talk. Test how far they can push you. Some of them will want to recruit you. Turn your strength into a tool for their agenda. Make you feel special so you forget you were powerful before they ever noticed you. Others will want to discredit you. Make you doubt yourself again. Put you in rooms designed to intimidate you, bore you, confuse you, exhaust you. Because if they can get you to shrink in the room, they can pretend you were never ready to be there in the first place. So here's the question you've been avoiding. When they finally open that door and say, "Come in," who are you going to be? The old you? The one begging for permission to exist? Or the version of you that kept walking through hell with no applause, no validation, and no guarantee, and still didn't quit? You think this room is about them? No. The room is about you. You're not being invited to witness their power. You're being exposed to the scale of your own. Think about it. You survived the before part. The part where nobody believed in you. Nobody understood you. Nobody helped you. You survived the part where the agents watched from a distance, quietly betting on your breakdown. Now comes the dangerous part. The part after you're noticed, when they start dangling comfort, titles, approval, shiny little things designed to make you forget the version of you that clawed their way here. Don't forget that version. That version is your core system. The one who kept going when your heart felt like a glitch. The one who didn't have an audience. The one who wasn't curating, wasn't performing, wasn't doing it for the story. Just for one more day, one more step, one more chance. That's the version they studied. That's the version they want in the room. Not the watered-down, over-polished, hyper-pleasant version you think you need to become to fit in. You don't fit in. You break in. You don't match their standards. You unsettle them. Because while they were tracking data, you were building character. While they were compiling reports, you were compiling scars. While they were analyzing, you were adapting. You know what a scar is? It's a healed wound that never fully shuts up. It's your past whispering, remember what you survived. Don't you dare play small now. So when you walk into that room, whatever it is for you, that job interview, that meeting, that stage, that office, that opportunity, that conversation, I want you to remember something simple. They've already seen your worst days. They have your file, remember. They have the data from the nights you cried until you couldn't breathe. They have the logs from the days you emailed, applied, tried, and heard nothing back. They have the pattern of your failures lined up in graphs. And in spite of all that, you are still statistically present. You're a glitch they couldn't delete, a variable they couldn't isolate, an anomaly that refused to sit where it was placed. So what exactly are you afraid of now? Embarrassment. You already felt that. Rejection. You survived worse. Awkwardness. You've sat in rooms where your soul didn't speak the language and still managed to breathe. You are afraid of being seen, but newsflash, you've been seen. They've been watching, tracking, measuring. So if you're going to be watched anyway, give them something worth watching. Walk into that room with all your history, not hidden, not erased, integrated. Don't pretend you didn't crawl out of nights that would have killed softer people. Don't pretend you don't remember what it felt like to want to disappear. You remember. You always will. That's your edge. Because while they're comfortable, you're hungry. While they're overconfident, you're aware. While they assume the world owes them a seat at the table, you remember when you were kept outside the building. They want you in the room because you are a live demonstration of something they can't simulate. A human being who has been harmed, disappointed, underestimated, and still chooses to build instead of just burn. They expect one of two responses from you. One, you get the invite and crumble, too overwhelmed, too scared, too desperate to be liked. Two, you get the invite and become arrogant. Lose touch with where you came from. Start playing their game, on their terms, by their rules. But there's a third option, the one they don't see coming. The Joker option. You walk into that room fully aware of the power imbalance, fully aware of the privilege in the air, fully aware they expect you to be grateful just to be there. And you smile, not because you feel small, but because you finally see it clearly. They didn't summon a pawn. They accidentally invited a wild card. You with the lived experience that can't be summarized in a report. You with the instincts that don't come from books, but from barely making it through situations they only read about. You with the courage that wasn't gifted, but carved out of sleepless nights and invisible wars. You don't go in there begging for a role. You go in there remembering they watched your every move and still couldn't stop your evolution. You're not here because they approved you. You're here because they couldn't ignore you. So when they ask you questions, answer like someone who has nothing left to prove. When they try to test you, respond like someone who has already passed the only exam that mattered, staying alive when you didn't want to. When they offer you something, don't grab at it like you're starving. Look at it. Feel it. Ask yourself, does this feed me or does it cage me? Because the room isn't always a reward. Sometimes the room is another test. Will you trade your authenticity for acceptance? Will you shrink your story to make them comfortable? Will you censor your truth so you don't stir the waters? They tracked everything. They already know how much you've swallowed just to survive. Now you decide if you're still swallowing or if you're finally speaking. Not for drama, not for applause, but because you refuse to leave this room as the same quiet, scared, doubting version of yourself they were betting on. They saw your darkest chapters. They watched you at your lowest. They know how bad it got. And here you are anyway, still breathing, still learning, still plotting your next move. You're not lucky. You're relentless. So when you feel that fear rise up, the tremble in your hands, the dry mouth, the racing thoughts, don't push it away. Use it. Let it remind you. If you were truly as weak as they wanted to believe, you wouldn't have made it this far. They want you in the room. Fine. But understand this. You are not there to prove you belong to them. You are there to prove, mostly to yourself, that everything you went through had weight, had meaning, had leverage, that every tracked moment of your struggle became fuel, that every recorded failure became data for your own evolution, that every little line in their report that said, high risk of breaking, was just another line they'll have to delete later. You are the evidence. You are the glitch. You are the problem in their algorithm. And now that they've opened the door, you don't walk in like a guest. You walk in like what you've secretly been this whole time. Someone they should have never let get this far. Someone they should have never let get this far. Because here's the thing they never admit out loud, and you kinda need to hear it clearly. They didn't miscalculate the world. They miscalculated you. They built everything on the assumption that people crack at a certain threshold. Enough heartbreak, you quit. Enough failure, you quit. Enough silence, enough ignoring, enough seen at 2:17 a.m. with no reply. You quit. You were supposed to quit. You weren't supposed to drag your half-broken self through days that felt like concrete. You weren't supposed to keep showing up to places where you felt invisible. You weren't supposed to keep caring about anything when caring hurt that much. And yet you stayed in the game, barely hanging on some days, sure. But hanging on. They watch that. They have charts on that. They've got boring little graphs that spike every time you refuse to die in place. They call it resilience. They call it anomaly behavior. They call it subject deviation from collapse pattern. You call it, I had no other choice. You call it, I refused to disappear. You call it, if I'm gonna hurt anyway, I might as well try. You see how different that is? They write cold words on a report. You lived it in your chest, and those high-rank eyes, those agents up in their glass boxes with their neat language and clean hands, they had to stare at something they don't fully understand. A person who should have broken, still editing their story in real time. You'd be amazed how rare that is. Most people get handed a script early in life and just read it. Here's who you are. Here's your lane. Here's what you're allowed to want. You got that script, too. Of course you did. Maybe it sounded like, you're too sensitive. You're not that smart. You're not leadership material. You're not the type they choose. People like you don't end up there. And for a while, you believed it. Don't lie, you did. You folded yourself into smaller shapes. You downgraded your dreams to make them less embarrassing. You pretended you didn't want much just in case you failed in public. But something in you kept glitching. You'd agree with them on the outside. Yeah, I know, I'm being unrealistic. But then you'd lie awake at night with that annoying little spark in your chest that refused to shut up. What if they're wrong about you? That thought, that one. You tried to kill it, buried it under routine, distractions, noise. You smothered it with relationships, substances, scrolling, fantasy, anything. And still, that glitch kept coming back. What if they're wrong about you? Every time you heard it, you made some small move. You sent that application. You tried that thing. You learned that skill. You stepped away from that person. Tiny steps. Nothing glamorous. But the system picked up each one of them. Click. Entry logged. Subject took action despite fear. Click. Subject refused to return to toxic environment. Click. Subject chose growth over comfort again. You thought nobody saw you choosing the harder path. You thought those decisions disappeared into the air. They didn't. They stacked. And every time they stacked, your profile shifted from predictable to unstable, variable, dangerous type. Not because you are chaotic, because you stopped being programmable. That's when the room entered the picture. There are rooms in this world built on the assumption that everyone who enters will be either afraid or desperate. Afraid of losing what they have. Desperate to get what they don't. You're different. You've already felt the worst kind of loss. The slow loss of yourself. You've already tasted what it's like to live below your own potential and pretend you're okay with it. You've already watched time pass while you quietly betrayed your own soul. What are they going to threaten you with exactly? Embarrassment? Rejection? Awkwardness? You've survived nights where your own mind turned against you. You've survived being your own worst enemy. A cold room with suits and fake smiles doesn't stand a chance against that. Here's the part that twists. And stay with this, all right? You walk into that room thinking they are the ones with the power. Look at the chairs. Look at the table. Look at the titles. Look at the money behind their names. Easy to feel small. Easy to forget what it cost you to even cross that threshold. But remember what I said. They've tracked everything. That means they know things about you that the people around you don't. They know how many times you almost quit. They know how many times you stayed anyway. They know the raw math of your survival. You carry that silently. They carry that in their files. They are not impressed with you by accident. They are impressed with you because the numbers betrayed their expectations. When their predictions said, collapse, you kept breathing. When their projections said, irrelevant, you kept evolving. When their chart said, statistically finished, you kept writing new data. You think you're just lucky to be invited. You're not lucky. You're expensive. You cost this system multiple failed attempts at breaking you. You cost them time, energy, resources. You cost every person who tried to belittle you a clean victory. You cost every bet made against you a quiet loss they'll never admit. You're not just walking into a room. You're walking in as a debt they owe reality. And deep down, they feel it. They might hide it behind polite smiles, neutral tones, professional questions. They might act like they're evaluating you. Is your tone right? Is your posture correct? Is your language polished enough? Inside, they're asking something else. How did this one survive everything we know they went through?